Hey, it's Anna. Welcome back to my channel, and I'm actually talking about my TBR. I feel like for the first time officially, this is all the books I read in September physically, so not including the one ebook and the, I believe, 8 audiobooks that I listened to. It was a big month in September, but I am actually very methodical when it comes to my TBR, so I kind of wanted to talk about what I'm reading in October, how that looked in September, and why I had so many on my TBR in September. This is my October TBR. The weight difference is a bit ridiculous, but that's okay. So my goal every month is to read 4 physical books and 4 audiobooks. I've been starting to add ebooks into there as I get more and more ebooks, but that is pretty much my standard. For audiobooks into October, I don't really know what I'm doing. I usually just look on Libby, see what I'm in the mood for. I'm really an audiobook mood person, but my physical TBR is extremely methodical. Number 1 is a book that I am reading as part of another longer video where I'm reading series that have 5+ books over the course of a few months. So I'm rereading the Pendragon series. This is the 10th book. In September, I read the 9th book. Then I'm part of a virtual book club with some friends I met through book social media. In October, we're reading the 10,000 Doors of January, and in September, we read Death of a Bookseller, which I'll get to that one. I'm also part of an in-person book club, and our in-person book club October pick is How to Solve Your Own Murder. For September, it was Before We Were Strangers. And then I needed to choose a 4th book, and typically when I'm looking for other books, I'll think of books that I have recently bought physically, or if I went to an author event and I wasn't able to read it in the same month as the author event, that's what I'll go to. And my husband and I went to an indie bookstore and he bought this book for me, Castle of the Cursed, so I plan to read it for October. But I'm somebody that actually really likes to have one of each media of a book going at all times, so I do have some NetGalley arcs that I plan to read in October. The first of which is Wish I Were Here, which is a romance book through Forever Publishing. I'm part of their influencer program for the next few months, so I'm definitely putting those on priority. Then I have 2 other arcs due in November. The first is Heist Royale, which is the second book to The Thieves' Gambit, which I am very excited to listen to. The third book I have is The Davenports More Than This. I liked The Davenports. I was very curious to see where it was going to go, so I'm excited to have an early copy of this. And then, truthfully, I haven't decided my last arc because I have 2 in January that I'm very excited for. The first is Yin Yang Love Song, and then the second, which is actually the first book I put on my pre-orders list for 2025, which was No Place Left to Hide. So essentially, that is my TBR going into October. Where did September get so run away with, right? I will talk about each book, why I put it on my TBR, and what I ranked it, going from worst to best. I want to end on a positive note. This is also an interesting time to make this video because this doesn't usually happen when I read, but I actually have a book in the 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star category to talk about. So in the 1-star category, unfortunately, I rated this a 1.5. We have Death of a Bookseller, and you can see I annotated it. This was our virtual book club pick. It was extremely slow in my opinion. I did not like the writing style. I feel like it was very lackluster, but 1.5 stars because I was shocked by the end. So in Death of a Bookseller, you're following Roach, who is a bookseller. A new bookseller comes in named Laura. Roach really loves true crime. Laura has a special connection to true crime. So Roach decides to literally push every boundary, sleeping in Laura's bed, making a copy of her house key, all of this to try to get closer to Laura. Laura is not the best person either. She doesn't want to get to know Roach, but you're not like rooting for Laura either. And it's all about how they interact with each other in the bookstore. Nobody in book club liked this. Very unfortunate, but it is book 1 of 20 that I read this month. So Death of a Bookseller, at least it only goes up from here, right? That's where you can think of it. The 2-star book that I read this month, and I think this might be a little controversial, but it is Allie Hazelwood's Not in Love. Now, I am not the biggest spice girly in the world. Maybe I should have turned away when it was warned to be an erotic romance when I began the audiobook. I did think it was interesting how she did both perspectives. I know this was Allie's first attempt at doing 2 perspectives. I didn't dislike it. I just kept wanting to go back to the plot, and the relationship to me was just very confusing. I feel like this was the deepest emotional relationship that Allie had explored, but like they just, I don't know what, like I don't know fully why they couldn't wrap their heads around like fully wanting to be together and embracing it. I don't know. And then you have the whole like mystery plot with the, you know, private equity company and all that I wanted to get back to, but we kept going to spicier scenes. So what can you do there, right? That's why I rated it a 2 out of 5. It just wasn't my favorite Allie Hazelwood book. And Not in Love, you follow follow Eli and Rue. Rue works for a company called Klein where she does her research, and Eli's private equity company is going to buy them out. But when Rue and Eli meet the night before and then see each other the next day during the acquisition, things get kind of funky, and then Rue has a lot going on with her home life that Eli gets involved in, and then Eli has actually had a past with Rue's boss, so you kind of get all of that explored in the book. So there is a lot of plot here I think that you can dig into, but it's just not as explored the exact way that I personally would have preferred it. I have two books that I rated exactly 3 stars. The first was Bright Young Women. This follows Pamela Schumacher and Tina. Tina's not the name of the other perspective. I'm already forgetting who the other name was, which, shocking, it's, a 3-star book. But we mainly follow Pamela as her sorority house goes through this horrific incident with a serial killer, and it's about Pamela trying to figure out what to do to move on. She meets somebody named Tina, and Tina's like, hey, I think my friend was killed by the same serial killer, and so then they try to catch him. I listened to this on audiobook. I don't think the audiobook narrators did it for me personally, and I think that definitely affected the rating. And then I did like the overall message of the story and making true crime, victim-centered instead of popularizing the serial killer. It was just still slower overall. I was a little confused on the dual perspectives for a while, so it just wasn't the best book, in my opinion, that I've had this month. The next 3-star book and the 4th book that I read on my TBR was My Daughter's Revenge. I got this in the mail, so I was very excited to read it, and the lines that sold me on this was, my first mistake was raising my daughter to be just like me. My second mistake might be what I do to protect her. It gave me very mother-daughter serial killer family vibes, and I was really looking for female rage books at the beginning of September, and I think I actually started this in August, so I just wanted to finish it because I really like finishing books and not leaving books open for a long time, which is funny when we get a little further in this video. So in My Daughter's Revenge, though, you're not really getting those like serial killer vibes anymore. It's more of a psychological thriller. You have Leah, who is the daughter, and Jules, that is the mother. Jules and her husband just have not been getting very well along. Jules joins an app to get like different attention from people. She just doesn't really feel her place anymore, especially now that her kids are getting older. Her daughter, Leah, goes to a music festival with the intention to lose her virginity. She does. Listen, why it's 3 stars? She keeps the condom, okay? It's just odd for me. It just wasn't for me. I don't know why we were so sex focused for so long at the beginning of this book. It was like some weird world building that revolved around sex in a psychological thriller. It just was not for me. However, when you get to the latter half of the book and you start to see the puzzle pieces coming together, you start to see more twists and turns, you get more action, it gets really good. But the beginning was just so tough to get through. So you essentially get to see how Leah, after starting this relationship at this music festival, it gets really twisted really fast. And again, you see what Jules does to protect her daughter. So 3 out of 5 stars. It just was not the best book for me personally. I rated 2 books 3.5 out of 5 stars. The first of which was Twisted. This is the 4th book, I believe, in the Never After series, which I think of as like dark romance for beginners. That's how I think of all of the books in the Never After series. You don't need to read them in order. It's not like the characters are showing up again, but for whatever reason, this is the 4th one, I think just for publication order. This is following Jafar, Jasmine, and Aladdin, so like the Disney characters, but putting a dark romance spin on it and changing the names, of course. So you have Yasmin, her father runs the world's largest like diamond company, and her father isn't doing so well, and her father really wants her to get married. In steps in Julian, who's supposed to be Jafar, and Julian has been Yasmin's father's right-hand man for years, and Julian's like, well, I'm not letting the company go to her. We're gonna get married. I'm gonna force her to marry me because I'm gonna threaten the love of her life, Aiden, and then she will be my fake wife, and then I will get the company. So that's kind of how their relationship starts, and you follow it from there. Like I said, dark romance for beginners. I can't think of a better dark romance series to start folks out with. I know it only gets darker from there, but I feel like this is a good introduction if folks want to get into the genre of dark romance. However, losing a 1.5 stars, it was a little too insta-lovey for me personally, and I just had questions in terms of that insta-love, and I just could not get those questions out of my head. I don't think it's a trope that I really like at all. So 3.5 out of 5 stars there. The other book I rated 3.5 out of 5 stars is actually part of a duology, and it gets us into our 4-star reads. I actually rated 8 books 4 stars. I've just been loving reading. What can I say? I've been reading for the enjoyment. I've been liking the books. So let's talk about my 4-star book, starting with the it's not a duology. I need to stop calling it a duology. My first 4-star and my 3.5-star book are from the Flesh of Gods trilogy. I met Chloe Gong and I flat out told her that I thought this was a duology. How embarrassing for me, in all honesty. Immortal Longings, I gave a 4 stars. Vilest Things, I gave a 3.5 stars. I don't know if I'm just not the biggest fan of second books, but this had more world building, I swear, than this did. And that to me is an issue. So Immortal Longings, because I don't want to do spoilers about Vilest Things, you follow Princess Kala. She enters this competition of 88 people who are trying to fight to get these riches. She was an exiled princess. She's trying to go back to kill the king. Luckily, somebody's on her side. His name is August. He also wants the king dead, but mainly so he can become king. And then the wild card that's thrown in is named Anton, who is trying to win the competition to save the love of his life, Ada, by getting the money from the competition. So you have a lot of plot that you can dig into with this. I just think there was a ton of world building. I feel like we were even world building at the end of this book. And then the world building continues into Vilest Things. I feel like we do not need to be world building that long because we're in the same world. We are not going to different planets. We're not going to different universes. We're not going to different territories. We're in the same place. So I don't know why I need so much world building. So that's my biggest gripe so far with the series. I feel like the third book is going to be absolutely fire though. I'm very, very excited for that third book. Speaking of 4-star books, I also read Falhart's Huntsman by Chloe Gong. I started this book in February, and this was the month for September that I said, I'm just going to finish any book I'm in the middle of. And I was in the middle of this one, and I said, I'm going to finish it, and I did. This is the second book in the Foul Lady Fortune duology, so I don't want to give any spoilers away, but this was a 4-star book. I have 2 more physical books that I rated 4 stars. The first is Raven Rise, which is the 9th book in the Pendragon series. I'm doing a whole video covering my rereading experience. So again, 9th book, we're pretty deep in it. 4 stars. They start to get more philosophical in this book, and it just gets a little monotonous, and I feel like I've heard the same argument for 8 books. Shocking. And so it just slows down the book for me. I also gave Wisteria 4 stars. This was my, I think, favorite book in the series. I might have rated Belladonna higher, but I think I definitely liked the vibes of this better. I just think there is a plot point that gets thrown in the middle of Wisteria that I'm like, why does this need to be here? And I was just thrown off from that point of the book on. So just wasn't my favorite book ever, but it was my favorite in the series. You do need to read the other 2 books, Belladonna and then Foxglove, before reading this. Again, there are spoilers all around the main characters, so I don't want to spoil it here, but it was a 4-star read for me. The only ebook I read this month was also a 4-star read, which was Rachel Weisz's Group Chat. I just think that this is something where I was also thinking of some other folks during this book. I think if I thought of the general population, I might rate it a little bit lower, but I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 stars just because I thought this book was a little too cringy at points, but I didn't think it was that bad cringy, but I know that'll be a common criticism of the book. So in Rachel Weisz's Group Chat, you are following Rachel as she is going into her 30th year. She's right around my age, so I was already connecting with her on that level. She has to figure out how to navigate her friend group chat changing as the dynamics change there, as her mother really wants her to also get married, so feeling that pressure. And then she's just not happy in her job either, so she's trying to figure out what she wants to do just as a person overall. So it's a book about self-discovery and seeing what you can do in these times of your life where you kind of just feel stuck in ruts, but you know that you also have to be there for the people around you. And it's interesting just to find the balance of that, I think, in life. And I like seeing that portrayed in books. I have 3 audiobooks that I then rated 4 stars. The first was The Weight of Blood. You're following Maddie, who is biracial. It gets discovered in her senior year by the other people in her school that she is biracial. And there is a bullying incident that goes viral. And so the town is going to have their first integrated prom to try to get rid of the bad press. I think it's 2014 in the book, and they're having their first integrated prom, which is just beyond me. And you get to see what happens when Maddie is really pushed to her limits. You also get to learn the secrets of the town in terms of how they handle other racial relations, because Maddie's not the only Black person in this town. I think the school they said is about 30% Black, but Maddie being biracial is like a huge deal in the town. Her dad is also super funky. So from the beginning, you know how this book is going to end just from listening to it, but it's such a unique unique listening experience because it's like a podcast, and they have a full audiobook cast in between who do a phenomenal job. I just think because you know how it's going to end, it was a little bit predictable, making it a little bit slower. And then there's no full closure at the end. If there was an epilogue in this book, it would have been a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I've never wanted an epilogue more than at the end of this book. The next audiobook I gave 4 stars was The Blonde Dies First, which I will just say I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And then it almost ended too quickly. Like the twist just didn't hit properly. And then the ending was, again, just a bit confusing. The closure was very forced. So most of the book, I was thoroughly enjoying it. And then you get to the end and I'm like, ooh, this is not what I was thinking it was. And then by the end, I mean like the last 2 hours of the book. So in The Blonde Dies First, you're following Devin, who is determined to have the greatest summer ever before her sister goes off to college, and they have their friend group, but her sister, who is her twin, goes to a different school. So part of Devin's plan is, hey, I'm gonna make friends with my sister's friends. But the first day that Devin meets her sister's friends, they pull out a Ouija board, and then Devin starts getting hunted down by a demon. Yikes. And so then her friend group has to figure out what they can do to get this demon back to its home, and then also for them to not die. However, the title of the book is The Blonde Dies First. So you kind of gotta know that that's going to happen, but I do think Joelle did it in a very interesting way of how the blonde dies first. And then I'm just realizing now this is my third like thriller-esque book that I'm giving 4 stars in the month of September. Listen, my audiobooks have been very thriller heavy because my physical books have not, and that's what I'm really craving. And so whenever I'm craving something, that's what I listen to. The third book that I rated 4 stars was For Found Dead. You follow Joe, who works in a movie theater in a mall, and the mall has pretty much closed. It's the movie theater's last night. She witnesses her manager get into an argument with his wife, and the manager kind of disappears. And that's a big deal because Joe's car keys and her phone, as well as the other employees' phones, are all locked in a safe. When the lights go out and they can't find the manager, but they do find a dead body, Joe realizes she's now in a life or death situation to try to get out of this theater. And there's a lot of construction elements that, because I somewhat work in construction, I thought were interesting to listen to, but I did take off a star just because I kind of just got lost at the end. I really wish I could even remember the resolution, but I just got kind of lost, and I feel like they laid hints at the beginning that weren't fully fleshed out by the end. So again, not the most satisfying ending, but I really loved the majority of the journey. And again, the audiobook narrator didn't do the best voices, but I feel like I'm just starting to get picky with my audiobook narrators. And then I did something in September that I've never done before, and I actually rated something 1/4 of a star, which was Every Last Fear. I gave this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. And I don't usually get that granular with my rating, but I knew I liked this book a little bit more than the author's other book that I've read, which was What Have We Done? And I rated that a 3.5 stars. And I didn't think it was as good as the multitude of 4-star books that I had read that month, so I'm giving it a 3.75. In Every Last Year, you follow Matt Pines and his family. His brother is in jail for murdering a girl and seemingly under a false confession, so there's already drama there. And then the rest of his family, his father Evan, his mother Olivia, his sister Maggie, and his brother Toby all get murdered in Mexico. So Matt is the only one alive and not in prison in his family, and it's really on his shoulders to figure out why his whole family was murdered and if he is able to get Danny free. You also have the perspective of Sarah Keller, who is the FBI agent kind of assigned to his case, but the only reason she's really assigned to the Pines case is because she was investigating some financial ne'er-do-welling that Evan's work was doing. So there's a lot going on, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was pretty fast-paced, but some of the twists were just, I don't understand why they were necessary. And again, I don't think the audiobook narrator really did the best job. So 3.75 is how I feel the best about ranking that specific book. And then I gave 3 books 4.5 out of 5 stars, and they were all actually physical books. First up, I have Educated. This is the 3rd nonfiction book that I've read this year. Pretty proud of myself. I only read 1 nonfiction book last year, and I've been trying to read more here and there, but I do really love the fiction genre. In Educated, you follow Tara Westover, who is growing up in a very strict household with a lot of beliefs around like the end of days, and you get to see how she essentially becomes educated and what that looks like. And this gave me such a great appreciation for the education that I personally had, and it definitely, if I was still a teacher, I feel like this would have just reinvigorated me at the beginning of the school year. I really loved the messaging behind it. I just felt like I was personally a little bit too dumb for this book. It was a 4.5 out of 5 stars because I definitely lost the plot during some of this book, so to speak. I didn't really understand what was happening, especially near the end when it gets a bit more philosophical. So it was just a little bit harder for me to grasp, which 4.5 out of 5 stars. I would definitely check some content warnings. You get into some pretty graphic abuse that Tara went through, and I feel like it all depends on kind of what mindset you're in before reading this. And I put this on my physical TBR way back before I had a bunch of other physical books that were on my TBR, when I decided that I was just gonna like finish every book that I was in the middle of. So that's why I read it in September. Before We Are Strangers was another 4.5 out of 5 stars. This was our in-person book club pick. The only reason it lost a half star is because the main character, Matt, does some weird stuff. I don't understand why he has some of the reactions he has, and he made me mad. So 4.5 out of 5 stars. You have a true love-hate love story. You have Matt and Grace who meet in college. You get to read about their entire college relationship, and then they get separated kind of along the way. And then 15 years later, Matt sees Grace at a train station, puts out a little Craigslist like missed connections ad, and then they, reunite. So you get to see again how they fell in love, what led to the hate, and then what led back to their love story. So I feel like this was some of the best, truest marketing on the front of the book that I've seen in a while, which I greatly appreciated. This is not a book I think that needs a lot of deeper level thinking, in my opinion. I feel like you just gotta go for the ride of this book. So 4.5 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it. I met Aiden Thomas in September, which I will have a video out about soon, and so I wanted to read Celestial Monsters. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is the second book in the Sunbearer Trials duology, so don't want to give away anything, but I did enjoy the second book, and I think this is one of my favorite duologies next to Blood Like Fate, Blood Like Magic. I had 2 5-star reads, which was very exciting, and I'm happy that one of them was actually an arc that I was sent called Nobody's Perfect. It comes out October 15th. This book I know won't be for everybody, but it was something that was definitely for me, and I feel like that's how most of my 5-star reads are, is that when I rate a book 5 stars, I don't necessarily think everybody should rate the book 5 stars, but I loved it enough to where I would read it again. I'm going to be recommending it in general, but I understand that this might not be everyone's favorite. So Nobody's Perfect, you're following Vivian, who has a YouTube channel called Mom Scouts. She starts out very small, but after she finds her divorce papers in her husband's sock drawer, her divorce goes viral online after a wine-induced rant. And so you get to see how she is handling her surprise divorce, how she's handling going from just being a housewife to having to try to find her own income, and where is she going to look for that income? Obviously on her YouTube channel that is now going viral. And she leans a lot on her friends, so you get to see how the friendships change over time. She has a son, you get to see how she interacts with her son, while also kind of rediscovering who she is after going through the divorce. There's a little bit of romance in here as well, but it's definitely not the forefront of the book. I really just enjoyed how fun this book was. I liked the self-reflection that was done by Vivian and that I did reading this book, and I read this in like 2 days. I couldn't put it down. I was just so excited to read this. Is this going to be for everybody? I don't think so, but it was for me, and that's what I really just like love about reading. And I wanted to make sure I read this before September because it comes out in October. So trying to be good with my arcs, that's always what I try to do, so really happy about that. Then my last 5-star read I actually talked about during my readathon video that was posted last week was Their Vicious Games. I loved it. It was so good. It was Squid Games with a little bit of The Bachelor, with Ace of Spades. It was so good. You follow Adina as she gets her way into this competition called The Finish because she gets into a fight with one of the girls at her school, and she essentially gets all of her college acceptances revoked. And so she wants to work her way back up to getting into this elite society that she has worked so hard to be a part of. She is Black, and it is a majority white society around her. In The Finish, it is her and these other girls essentially competing for the blessing, you could say, of the Remington family. They choose a girl every year who they're going to champion, but this year is different because one of the heirs, Pierce Remington, is going to be turning 18. So now he is looking for a wife, which means there can only be one wife, meaning only one girl can survive. And this book was just so twisty. It was so descriptive. I loved the amount of time that they spent on each task. You have other games that they play along. You really get to see a lot of the other side characters shine through. I thought it was such a good book. So I'm really impressed with Joelle. She's definitely an author that I have my eye on now, that I want to put on all my lists. And that is all 20 of the books that I read in September. September, which is just crazy to think about in my opinion because I don't usually read that much, but I feel like between the author events and having ARC obligations and my usual TBR, I really wanted to just get as much as I could read. So clearly my TBR for October is not as big as my TBR for September was. However, I do anticipate getting some book mail this month, which will probably increase my October TBR. So if you want me to do another wrap-up video where I talk about what I read in October, definitely let me know. I don't think I'm going to have as many YouTube videos talking about the books I'm reading in October either, because I feel like a lot of videos I talk about what I'm reading in real time, and September was the first time that didn't happen. So I'm really happy to be able to make this video, and I don't think October is going to be one where a lot of my videos are surrounding what I'm also currently reading. So if you want another wrap up in November for my October TBR, definitely let me know, because I'm guessing the stack is going to grow from this, but we're gonna have to see. Also, this is definitely deceiving because I got the large print version of How to Solve Your Murder, and so I feel like it's a little deceiving of a stack, but it's still going to be nice to check these off my list, and I'm obviously very proud of the 20 books that I've read. I'm curious how many books are on your typical TBR. If you kind of have a formula that you follow when crafting your TBRs as well, I'd be super curious to hear. Leave a comment below, and I'm going to be posting some videos about some authors that I met whose books I actually talked about in this video, but I love making videos about going to meet authors, so I'm going to be posting those, and then sooner or later we're gonna get back to another readathon, which I am just super excited for. So, and if you always have any other video suggestions, definitely leave them in the comments. Feel free to pick up one of my books on my TBR to read it with me this month, and if you're already reading a book, don't forget to keep on reading.